strategy over the last 3 months? Or will it be, as I suspect, more dithering from an ineffectual and apparently rudderless government for the majority of that time? Taoiseach, you went against NPHET advice for December and opened the economy for Christmas, which has led to hundreds of unnecessary deaths. Our hospitals are over-capacity and our hard-working frontline health staff are at the end of their tether. Taoiseach, will you now provide a full and detailed report to the Dáil on the negotiations with both jurisdictions and discussions in pursuit of an all-Ireland COVID
Way over
strategy?
time now, Deputy. Thank you. Taoiseach.
First of all, you don't need to go to FFI for the government's strategy in relation to COVID. It was published. And you know that. The roadmap for living with COVID was published a number of months ago, and we're now at level 5 of that roadmap. That's where we are right now in terms of the implementation of that in order to suppress the numbers and get them down. And the numbers are falling steeply. But there is enormous pressure on our hospitals, and as I said earlier, our policy is very, very clear. It is one of prolonged suppression of the virus, and once we have numbers down, to keep them down, and we'll be assisted in that regard with the rollout of the vaccination programme. So far, we've been in a position now to vaccinate the residents of nursing homes and the staff who work in our long-term healthcare facilities, and also up to 78,000 of frontline healthcare workers. And the next phase will be to complete that, the first dose of all frontline healthcare workers. We've commenced the second dose in 27 nursing homes. That's a key part of our approach, obviously, to managing and suppressing the virus. And that is why the level 5 restrictions have been extended to the 5th of March. And the people have responded to those restrictions, and their response is driving down the numbers, and that will help to relieve the pressure on our frontline healthcare workers who are doing extraordinary work in our hospitals and in our intensive care. In relation to zero COVID, it has been discussed. We've never received public health advice to pursue a zero COVID strategy. We've never received that advice. And we've debated in this House, and people have come forward with a view. Haven't fleshed it out either in terms of its implications. Haven't. Because it, in essence, would be, and I'm willing to debate it at any time in terms of the length of time that the country would need to be locked down for, because, I see, New Zealand will be locking down for another 12 months now. And that's their decision, but their geography is somewhat different. You talk about the all-island strategy as if it's all the Dublin government's fault. That's a really false, untrue, fallback position that has no substance. Dublin government does not run the Northern Ireland executive. There are 5 parties on that executive. They've taken their decisions over time in relation to COVID. The 2 chief medical officers have agreed a memorandum of understanding and do engage. We've had the North-South Ministerial Council meetings. I have spoken on a number of occasions to the First Minister and to the Deputy First Minister in relation to alignment. But you know the political issues in the North as well as I do.
Time is up.
But you don't call it out either, because it suits you and others to blame the Dublin government for everything. That tends to be the fallback position, when the reality is different, as you know.
That's where we're going to leave Leader's question. Just about 5 minutes left on the programme. Let's go to yourself, Paul, first. It's pretty clear, as we said at the outset of the programme, the opposition is not convinced by the government approach on international travel. Mary Lou MacDonald, this isn't a system of mandatory quarantine, but of voluntary self-isolation. And we heard those sentiments echoed time and time again.
Yeah, and this is just a continuation of Sinn Féin trying to paint their own set of facts. There's nothing voluntary or discretionary about the mandatory quarantine which we've brought in. It's also not going to take months, which she outlined in the Chamber. And we have had engagement with the Northern Assembly. So it's a repeat of Sinn Féin's tactic of trying to make up their own set of facts. I thought the Taoiseach was quite strong.
Can I just ask you, how do you enforce it in circumstances where, as the Social Democrats, Catherine Murphy said today, and they've been on this for months and months and months, where you have passengers not even filling out the correct forms?
Yeah, and look, enforcement is an issue, but don't forget, for the first time, the quarantine is going to be not a guidance, but actually mandatory, and that is a big change.
Enforced by whom?
Well, throughout this whole pandemic, we have had enforcement that has been done by the community, by people themselves, and largely it has worked. We're not a state which has ID cards. We're not a state which imposes curfews, but we have managed to maintain the numbers in this virus in advance of the variant coming. So I think it's just wrong for them to say that it's voluntary and discretionary. And I think equally on the zero COVID, there are easy answers being peddled here without actually identifying what zero COVID actually means. The Taoiseach was very strong. He said there's going to be a prolonged period of restrictions in order to reduce this so that we never have the numbers that we have again
what
in
about,
ICU.
Mary, what about these charges coming at the government about the lack of progress on an all-island approach and the progress to date on alignment? How valid are those criticisms?
Well, Thomas Pringle was saying there that he had an FOI request in relation to those contacts and that they simply weren't there according to the response he got back, which he initially put in last October. So that would suggest they hadn't been in place at the time. I think what the Taoiseach was trying to do there was to get two major points across. First of all, he was leaving the door open to further quarantine measures, that they might be broadened in the way that the opposition might like, because he said the legislation, which he said will be done quickly, not in a matter of weeks, as the Taoiseach said yesterday, he said that legislation will have the capacity for broadening these rules. So that would suggest that there is at least a possibility of a wider quarantining system in place, something that ministers would have privately reflected what the Taoiseach said publicly just there. He also, I think, was laying the ground for lockdown, level 5 restrictions lasting well beyond March the 5th, because he said the purpose here and the aim here and the strategy here is for a prolonged suppression of the virus. And he said the vaccine will give more choices to the government in terms of that towards the middle of the summer. So I think what he's really saying there is that we're in for the long haul.
Yeah, and when we're in it, Paul McAuliffe, for the long haul, public compliance and buy-in, purchase, it's absolutely key, isn't it? And on that issue of international travel raised by the Social Democrats, when we see people coming home, some of them from holidays or whatever, it does undermine that public compliance, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's irresponsible behaviour and it's not in compliance with the vast majority of people who have, I think, the travel restrictions yesterday, but also the introduction of the PCR tests earlier than that does discourage travel. It does allow essential travel, and we have to ensure that is allowed as well. But ultimately, this is about suppressing the virus for a prolonged period of time. I thought the Taoiseach was quite strong that is the strategy of the government, and whether you pursue zero COVID or whether you have prolonged suppression, it requires a long and aggressive period of restrictions.
Okay.
And it's certain that that's what's ahead of us.
Why are we looking at international students coming into the country in that case?
Well, look, in my view, all essential travel should be around logistics, around compassionate leave, and I don't believe that students coming into the country on international programmes should be permitted at this time.
So more to be ironed out on this one, Mary Regan. Is that what we're to get from all of this?
Yeah, certainly we didn't get a huge amount in terms of the detail of how this quarantining will operate from the Taoiseach. You know, the opposition were calling for detail around implementation, enforcement, and Catherine Murphy, also of the Social Democrats, wanting to know, you know, where is the evidence really to show that international travel isn't impacting significantly on our numbers, as some ministers claim. The Taoiseach didn't really give her the evidence or, back up that claim as in the way she might have wanted. But I think, the Taoiseach did, certainly I felt, left the door open for a move, if not quite to the zero COVID strategy, to something closer to what people are looking for in that regard, because he said that once the numbers come down, he's going to do whatever it takes to ensure they stay down and don't get back up again. Mary Regan and Paul McAuliffe, thank you both very much for joining us on the programme today. That is our lot. We'll be back with coverage of Leaders' Questions again tomorrow at the same time. Good evening, slán go fóill.
boost your mood in 2021 with delicious healthy eating ideas from Operation Transformation. Recipes and easy to print out shopping lists are online at rte.ie/OT. Now it's time for a bit of a stretch with Ray and O'Shea.
Vorged fáilteach the chlár an lei and nov. We are here for the next 15 minutes to get the blood flowing all around the body and to get you up and moving. And the happy fitness guy, Ray Lally, is going to tell us how. Ray, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic.
What are we going to do today?
Today is going to be a cardio burn. So obviously yesterday was a strong one, it was a tough one. Today's going to be much faster. And again, it's going to be tough as well. So it's going to be more of a heavy breathing type of session.
Okay. We need to be careful though, I'd imagine, do we?
Oh, 100%. So if I'm doing something, even if you take a break for 10 seconds and come back to it, that's ideal. Or doing an easier version. Either way is perfect.
It's perfect.
So all you need today as well is a chair and optional with some cans and some weights.
Okay, and you want everybody at home to do this with you now, don't you?
Yes, we're starting off sitting down, so no excuse.
Okay, starting off sitting down with workout. Ever a hand.
So we're going to really feel the cardio burn here and get ourselves that bit of heavy breathing. So we're going to start off with seated burpees. So we're going to start off in the squatting position, or the sitting position, up, reach for the stairs, coming down again, and touch the floor. And up again. Nice. And again, you're doing this as slowly or as quickly as you feel comfortable. But the real benefit here is you bring your heart from here all the way down and back up. So that's where the big benefit is here. Lots of mobility, but you're non-stop working. Well done. Excellent. You're still getting your body up and down, but you're looking after that lower back, which is very important. Well done, guys. Excellent stuff.